Hello, residents of the universe. Welcome to Ways to Human. My name is AJ, and today I am with the amazing Secular Rarity. You may know him from shows like The Atheist Experience, Root Wanted, Skeptic Haven. I could probably go on for like 5 minutes. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm really excited to be here, AJ. We've had so many great chats, already in the ACD after the shows and stuff, and I'm just happy to be here, and we're gonna have some fun, I think. So.
Yeah, those are the best because you can get to know people and make a genuine connection. Really, really cool stuff. I really like the ACA for doing those things, not just getting the word out to people, but actually connecting them. That's
totally
really cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, I think, at the end of the day, it's good that we all get together and we get a little reprieve, from the Christian nationalism and the Bible thumping, and we get to laugh and whatever. But it's even better to know that, genuine connections can be made. And that's I've just seen that, the whole time I've been screwing around with people in this space. So.
So speaking of that, I've heard you mention that you do these sort of in-person events.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. About a year ago, actually, our year anniversary is coming up here shortly in the next few weeks. But about a year ago, a buddy of mine came to me, a friend of mine that I have known for 4 or 5 years going on now at this point, and we had always, regularly gotten together to have these conversations where me as an atheist, as somebody non-religious, him as a Christian, a follower of Christ, we would get together and we would invite other people to come and listen and ask questions. And we've been doing that, off and on for, like I said, 4 or 5 years. And he came to me one day and he said, "Man, I want to do this more. I think this is really cool, and I want to keep doing this." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, man, this is awesome. I love this idea. Like, yeah, what do we do? And he said, "Well, I think we get some people involved. I think we find a group of people in Nashville that are really dedicated to this." And we did. He called some people and I called some people, and the whole point is we want, and we are split, fairly evenly. We have a few more atheists at this point, and we're gonna recruit some more Christians, but we're fairly split between Christians and atheists, and the goal is specifically to demonstrate how to have these challenging conversations where you really go after somebody's beliefs, not the person. Yeah. But you really attack each other's beliefs and don't hold back, but you do it in a cordial way. You do it in a way where there is, again, those genuine connections being made. And so that was how we founded the Conversation Coalition. And now, like I said, we've been doing almost every single month. We took off in January or December. We took off in December. But every single month at the last Thursday of the month, we get together and we host an event. And the next one that we're doing, okay, just so you can get some understanding, the next one that we're doing coming up is called Grill a Christian.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Where our Christian members of the organizing committee will be taking questions. Just rapid fire, just go. And then the month after, we'll flip it around and we'll be grilling an atheist. So this is what we love. We've got a bunch of really dedicated people now in the area that come to every event, and they stay an hour or so after talking. And it's really different, having these conversations online. Having these conversations over the phone, versus, truly being able to sit across from somebody and be able to reach out, and hug them, and it's truly one of the most amazing experiences ever to be sitting in a room with people, and we've done this. 30 some odd people, all kind of going around giving their opinions, knowing full and well that we outright disagree with each other on some of the most fundamental things about who we are and how we see the world. And an hour later, it ends with everybody standing around, hugging and shaking hands and smiling. And right, I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think there's a desire for that. I really do. So it's been phenomenal this last year. I'm excited to see what the next year brings for us. So
I love that. And when I heard about it, I was like, man, that sounds really cool. Because have you heard of the March for Science, right? March for Science. Okay. So I actually organized the Houston one. Right? We had we had like 15,000 people come out, and it was pretty cool. That was like my first like little activism, like big. Putting myself out there, right?
That's
and
amazing.
Speaking in front of people. So after the march, we were like, what else can we do? So we started doing these events. We reached out to an organization called Taste of Science, and what they did was they would bring a scientist and to like a brewery or a bar, and then people will come out and listen to them, and then they will like have like Q&A after, and it was really awesome. Like so many amazing people, but it wasn't religious purpose, right?
Sure.
So I thought, like, wow, like what a cool thing would that be? Because one of the main things that I focus on my channel is like science communication, right? I believe that the earlier you teach kids science, the harder it is for them to be indoctrinated into like religious beliefs because they understand the world better. So, but you already see people who were indoctrinated from so early on in life with the religion already, and so they've come into adulthood with that mindset, and they don't understand science. So I was like, man, what if we could mix the two, right? Like something like what you do and something like what we used to do with Taste of Science.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's a good idea. So I brought it up to when I went to meet Seth Andrews to the that show that he had a couple of days ago. One of the guys that is on the board, you might know him, Will Judy.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! I love Will Judy. He's such a great guy. Yeah.
So I talked to him and I was like, hey, like I brought up the idea, and he was like, alright, well, I can't do it with Houston Oasis because they're 501c3.
Right.
So let's do it with his personal, like his baby, his Secular Houston. So we're gonna talk about that later tonight. Actually, there's like a meeting, like a whole meeting they're gonna have. They're gonna bring that up, and we're gonna see what we can maybe come up with some.
Oh, that's wonderful. Definitely tell Will I said hey. Yeah. Great guy for sure.
Man, he really is. He's doing a lot.
Front lines of activism for real. Yeah.
I mean, there is, like you say, there's such a big need for connecting the two, and we're not always trying to like convert people. We're not trying to be like, hey, you just stop believing us now, but whatever. We're trying to like make people understand the world a little better, think critically, like understand basically like what they believe and why they believe it.
So. Absolutely, and to recognize that there are a lot of things that are just well documented scientifically that do not destroy your faith. Okay, look, you can have your belief in God and the Bible, and not have to believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. Like me personally, hey man, I'm in the boat of saying I don't think there's any good reason to believe any of it, right? But here's the thing. Have your Yahweh, okay? Have your Yahweh. Stop denying that radiocarbon dating works, because you fill up your car with gasoline. Like you can have your God and gasoline. It's okay.
Exactly. You can have both. Yeah, like you said. That's so true. speaking of like the beliefs, how did you? I heard like kind of like how you came around to deconstruction and but how did that affect the relationship with families? And did you have like a sense of loss? Like
Yeah.
what would you say? There's one thing that I see a lot in the people that I talk to, and it's that comfort. Um, Especially of the afterlife, and saying, okay, I want to be with my family forever. Like, how do you disconnect from that? Or how do you
Yeah.
find comfort in a different way?
Yeah. So I was very lucky that when I stopped believing, it wasn't something that, really drove a wedge between my family or the vast majority of my friends. There were some friends that were, pretty exclusively from the church group, type thing that I didn't really talk to after that because I just wasn't going to church. But yeah, I was very, very lucky in that sense that I did not have those horror stories that a lot of people do. In terms of that outward community, uh, I lost some community for sure because I was the last person really in my family that was going to church. So the rest of my family was still believing, for the most part, but they weren't going to church regularly, and I was going to church regularly to play music and stuff. And so, that was something
The
that,
bells.
yeah, right, the bells, definitely. And that was something that, I definitely mourned that aspect. I wasn't able to have that outlet anymore, and I wasn't able to see those people anymore. But again, when it came to, my close family and my close friends, that wasn't something that really messed with that relationship. The fear of hell, for sure, was something that stuck with me. Um, but it was more so just death in general. Like by the time that I had really stepped away from believing, Jesus Christ is the Son of God, resurrected, all that stuff. Um, I wasn't terribly concerned, at least, about like the torture from hell. But I was very concerned about just not existing. That was a struggle to get past for sure because it's very difficult to conceptualize at all, right?
Yeah.
Just not being here um, is not something that you actually can really conceptualize because whenever you have that image in your head, whenever you have that concept that you're wrestling with, it's always through the lens of you. It's always going to be in the sense of, well, what would this room be like if I didn't exist here? And it's like, yeah, but that's not the case because what you're doing is you're taking the world as you understand it and you're just pulling yourself out. But that's not the world. It's not. It isn't like that. So that was tough for sure. And there were a handful of different thoughts that I came across that were helpful. Some people that talk about it, really did help. Dave Warnock, for sure. The dying out loud, um, all of that was really, really helpful when it came to just kind of being more accepting of that process. Now obviously I'm still very thankful that I am still alive at the moment, so I haven't gone through that whole death process. But
Right.
I feel a heck of a lot better about it now than I did when I was a believer.
Yeah, I really like Neil deGrasse Tyson when he asks, "Well, how did you feel before you were born?" And I was like, "Man, that one really got me thinking." And I was like, "Well, I didn't." Like,
Right.
and he's like, "It's exactly the same concept, but after that, And so also having a pretty good understanding of like the human brain. I know that there is questions about where consciousness comes from
Sure.
or stands from. It's like a really complicated topic. But when you're looking at just the brain and the connections, and there's like that's it. Once that shuts down, there is no more thinking. You're not gonna be like conscious of what is happening after that.
Right. You're not going to be concerned. You're not going to be. You're not going to be confused. It's just not going to happen anymore. And again, that is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why we as a species have struggled with that so much is because of the pretty much impossibility of fully conceptualizing. We know that it's going to happen. We're fully aware that it's going to happen. But when somebody explains it to you, it's like, yeah, I don't really get it. And it's like, yeah, but you watched these people die. Like, your grandmother died at one point in your life. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And it's like, well, okay, it's going to be like that, but without you. And it's like, I don't get it.
It's interesting because I used to believe in ghosts, like in sort of when I wasn't raised religious, okay? I was raised sort of like whatever religion isn't important. Like, we had all kinds of religious books at home. My mom had like walls of books and books. That was like my thing. I was always reading. But we were never into religion. So after high school, when I met my husband, his family is very religious. And so when I first got pregnant, my kid was diagnosed with while I was pregnant. We were told that the baby would be having a heart condition. And that was like, I was offered to have a termination, and it was kind of like a crisis of what to do. And so we were I was kind of like thrown into like the whole religious thing, like trust that God had a plan and all of that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put it in God's hands, and I'm just going to continue the pregnancy. And so I started going to church, and I started reading the Bible. And it was kind of like a kind of like being thrown in the water. It's just like a submersion of faith. And I had the whole taking me up on the stage, and like the priest, the pastor just like putting his hands on like trying to heal you and the baby and all of that. Obviously that didn't work. Like, my kid had like 2 open heart surgeries, and like, so it's like when doing great now, but it was like a rough time, and it was something that sort of brought me into that. And so what I meant by that was that I did believe in things like having a soul, and that after you die, your soul, either goes to heaven or goes to hell or whatever, and doing the things to make sure that you're gonna go to heaven. And when somebody close or your family passed away, when they after the funeral, I was walking into a house and I heard his voice, like clearly. But now years later, I'm thinking, okay, listen, I didn't have my cochlear implant at the time. I knew this person's voice, and what I heard was a phrase that this person would often say. So now that I look at it with a more of a skeptical mind, I'm like, it was probably sort of like a repetition of it in my head, like a wishful thinking that this person was still there. And obviously I no longer believe in ghosts and souls and all of that, but it was like, it was kind of like a funny, like a weird experience, and it makes you realize how people can fall for stuff like that, or like believing in miracles or believing in all that kind of stuff.
And
it's really easy.
And that's a phenomenal point, because a lot of times when we have these discussions about deconversion or faith and belief and religion and all this jazz, oftentimes it's very focused on a handful of things, right? A lot of times it's the proof of God's existence, I think you're wrong because you're gay and my God said that's bad, that type of garbage, right? So we don't always focus on those periphery beliefs that kind of come along in the basket. The God belief oftentimes has this afterlife belief, which almost always has this soul belief, and then there's there's this miracle belief, and there's X and Y and Z, and it's all of this stuff together. And those other beliefs can actually be the ones that are, the most damaging, the most harmful, right? Because like you were saying, you had this belief in souls at the time, and miracles and so forth. And so, yeah, now here you are standing on the stage at some, Presbyterian whatever hullabaloo, and they're, rubbing your belly and telling you that your baby's going to be magic. And it's like, what? So.
Yeah. It's wild as well. Yeah. Like faith healing is just something else, man. Like you watch the videos and it's like they're making their legs grow, and like it's just like a shifting of their shoe, and nobody's seeing that, and you're like, oh my goodness, how can you?
Yeah. And even though so often that is tied to a God belief, so often that is tied to one of these major religions, it isn't always. And that belief in and of itself is the one that's causing harm, not the belief in God, right? In this particular instance, it is not the fact that this person is saying, yes, I believe that Allah is the one true God. That's not the issue. The issue is they believe that these miracles are possible, and that these miracles are the way to fix these very real physical problems.
Yeah, and I have talked to many people about that, specifically about miracles, and you explain it in a scientific way, and they're like, well, no, but this how was the but. Like,
yeah,
but I
and it's
saw
never
it,
good.
But
Yeah.
How could this child came and then
Are all
prayed,
these people
and
lying?
then he was better the next day? But like, what did he go to the doctor in between the prayer and they
Yeah, weird how he took Advil and then his headache went away. Yeah, it just so happened to be after the prayer. Whatever.
Yeah. So hard. Yeah. So speaking of that, like after obviously it took you a while to reconvert. Like I'm sure it was like years.
Oh yeah.
I think that happens to everybody. For me, I've only recently started saying, "Hey, I'm an atheist," and even to family. Like I would say after like 2 years ago, I will be posting stuff on Facebook and be like, "Hey, pray for," kind of like it was. I didn't truly believe, but it was more like a way to fit in, to not feel that the family will be like, well, why should she not believe? Because it's just so ingrained on everything. But my question was more like, what led you to this point, from being somebody that believed to being somebody that's just completely changed? Like you said, these beliefs lead to things like hate towards LGBTQ people, or things that are harmful, truly harmful. So I'm sure that in your process of learning, you need to change your mind, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many people that have such a hard time with that. So
what for sure.
Yeah, what led you to this point? Like, what's your why, basically? Why do you do what you do now?
Yeah. So again, my story is, not different from a lot of people's stories, but different from a lot of the, well-known folks that are kind of in, this, I'm in kind of their same space, content creators and doing the call-in shows and stuff. A lot of those individuals, unfortunately, have, seen truly the darkest and most heinous side of these beliefs, and a lot of them, and they they admit this, not proudly, of course. They're ashamed of this past, but they internalized a lot of that terrible stuff too. When I was a Christian, I wasn't somebody who condemned people. I wasn't somebody who accepted the idea that gay people were not part of the kingdom of heaven. So my mother and father divorced when I was very young, and since that day, about 30, I guess 30 years ago, I'm 30, I guess, like 24-ish, at math. Over 20
here.
years. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not being tested here. Over 20 years, my mother and her partner have lived together, and they raised. They are absolutely both my moms. That was something that was so very close to me growing up.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's something that was such a refutation to what I heard in many of these Christian circles. Now, the church that I was going to was Methodist, and Methodists tend to be a little bit more kind of loosey-goosey, relaxed on some stuff. Most Methodists still to this day, when you poll them, even despite some of the recent kind of odd happenings in a handful of these conventions, but the vast majority of Methodists are LGBTQ affirming. They are comfortable with female pastors. We had a female pastor. I mean, all these different things. A lot of the more liberal kind of Christianity. For me, what one of the biggest, I guess, difficulties in terms of kind of stepping away from in the belief. So I had stepped away from, definitely the label of Christian, definitely the label of religious, definitely the belief in like a God, definitely, resurrection, loaves and fishes, all that nonsense. I was comfortable with just putting that all down. But the last thing that was really, really tough for me was this kind of very me-focused universe. And what I mean by that is when we hear people speaking the Christianese, right? Or when we hear, a religious, very, very devout Muslim, they'll often say things like, something will happen around us, right? And they'll go, oh, well, God, Allah did that purposely. And you're like, Allah did that purposefully? That's super weird. That was a crate of, oranges, and you're telling me that Allah purposefully broke that board so that one orange could fall and splatter exactly like that. That's fascinating that Allah chose that as opposed to, I don't know, speaking directly with people like supposedly he could do. Whatever. Fine. It's your belief, not mine. But what I had was this very deep sense that there were all of these messages that the universe was trying to send me. Like, if I walked outside and it just so happened to start raining right then and there, oh my God, that was a deal, AJ. That was like I needed to pay attention today because it was a big one. Now, what was it trying to tell me? I don't know, man. I always came up with reasons after the fact. At the time, I felt like, oh, clearly it was telling me that I'm going to have, my hose is going to bust today whenever I go out to water my garden, which it happened. Look, how crazy is that? Oh my God, the universe, thank you. But at the time I felt like it was perfect. It was like I'd drive by a mailbox that said 535 on it, and I'd go 535.
That's my fucking number or something.
Exactly. It was always wild, nutty stuff like that, and it would be like, oh my gosh, there's a blue 7 next to a tiger. Well, tiger has this many letters in the name.
That's my favorite animal.
Exactly.
It had to be.
Exactly. It was always something. It always worked out. There was never a single time that the message wasn't for me, that it wasn't important, that I couldn't figure it. Never the case. I always did. And so that's one of the reasons that I fight so hard against that ideology, is because it's not a God belief, maybe you could say it's kind of this pantheism kind of universe is God. Maybe. Yeah, right. Like, okay, fine, sure, maybe it's in that group. But at the end of the day, what it really is it is this complete and total failure in reason. That thought process is one where there is no possibility of ever getting a wrong answer. That's bad. That is not a good way to come to conclusions. Because if you don't have the possibility of ever failing, how can you be sure? How can you feel confident that you actually succeeded? So, that was something that really made it difficult for me to finally break from, that last little vestige of those types of beliefs. When it came to, really stepping away from Christianity and a belief in God itself, it was morality. It was looking deeper into various people's constructions and understandings of how we get here. And, many, many years would go by. I mean, I read way too much Kant and Mill and just all kinds of stuff from a bunch of old dudes in Europe and all that jazz. And then I started getting into some more, modern stuff. Came across this idea of well-being eventually. Really loved that. Really, really loved that. Saw that everywhere. And now that's what I say, and that's kind of where I stand. Because when I did believe in God, when I did believe that Jesus Christ was the perfect incarnation of human behavior and all of that stuff, I truly thought that there was no way to be good unless you had that as your basis. Unless you had at the absolute core the idea that there is this being, and that being cared so much that they did X, Y, and Z, And so when I started realizing there were a bunch of other people who had been talking about this, and a lot of them came to very different conclusions and didn't have God anywhere as a part of it, it was like, whoa, wait.
There's more.
Yeah, why? Wait, okay, so you can be a good person. Just to be a good person? I don't think so. Without God, how do you do that? If you're not saved in the blood of Christ, how would that... Wait, so you just do the right thing because it is the right thing? No, I don't think so. No, I don't. But yeah.
How do you know it's right?
Exactly. I mean, and that's
the question.
That's where I went.
Yeah.
And that, I think, once you really truly open that door, I think it's very, very hard to get back to a place where you feel super comfortable with religious or God-based morality. Because I think there are a lot of really glaring problems with it that these other ideas fix. They do a better job. It's not to say that they're perfect, It's not to say that deontology is the way to go, right? It's just to say that it does really seem like we have better answers.
Yeah, like I love Sam Harris, the moral landscape.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people criticize it because they're like, well, no, but he's saying that it's this absolute morality. That's not what it says. The way I interpret it is, it says that we have methods to determine what causes more or less harm.
Yeah.
And so we can use that to determine what is right and what is wrong, or where are, places where there may be certain gray areas, right? Where you have nuances, and you can make decisions based on those and not on a question for that moment. Like, when you were a Christian, had you read the whole Bible or just the New Testament?
That's a very good question. Take a step back real quick, which is Methodists are fairly common for baptizing the brand new baby, right? Like few days into being born.
Yeah, I was baptized. I was baptized when I was more like my dad rather than my mom.
Right. Okay. So I wasn't able to get baptized right away. I have an older brother. He was baptized right away. I wasn't able to get baptized right away because I was very sick as a newborn, and I was in NICU for about a couple of months, I believe. And I got better, obviously. But because of that, it just messed with that timeline in terms of like when my parents had said like, hey, we're gonna do it this Sunday or whatever, And then it just didn't happen, and then a couple months went by, and you know how life works. And so next thing you know, here I am at, 10 years old, fully invested in this faith, and genuinely believing this is correct. And I wasn't baptized, and I knew that. That was a really big problem. And so I decided that I needed to get baptized after a couple of years of wrestling with it. So that was a really big, that was a really big moment to, for me personally in that experience, because for a very long time I felt very bad that I wasn't, actually baptized. I'm so sorry. I lost the question. Can you ask me?
Right. Yeah, I forgot to. I was into the story.
I know. I got excited.
No. I like that. The question was like when you were a Christian, whether you had actually read the whole Bible.
Boom. Perfect. Okay, so now I remember why I was telling you. It was because
I knew there was.
Yeah. There's a tie-in. I swear. It makes sense, y'all. Just hang with me for another second. So I was very much a believer. Hadn't been baptized. Was upset by that. Got to the age of 12 or 13 and decided I wanted to go and be baptized. And part of the reason that I wanted to be baptized was because that was the age of confirmation in the Methodist Church, which, makes you a full member of the church now. And so I wanted to be baptized before I did that. And when that struck me, I sat down one morning and said, I'm going to read the whole damn Bible. I'm going to start to finish this thing. And didn't finish it before my baptism and the confirmation. But yes, did ultimately start to finish, get all the way through. But mostly, absolutely, AJ, I mean, you're spot on. Mostly it was pick and choose passages here and there, a lot of the New Testament, and a good bit of the, pre-Abraham stuff, right? Like, you hear a lot about Adam and Eve and the flood, but then there's a whole section in the middle there where it's just like, we don't really care that much.
Especially for a child to read.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, there's at no point in time, by the way, did any of my pastors or any of my youth group leaders or anything like that, nobody sat down and was like, and then Esau begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Terry, and Terry begat Philip. Like, that never happened. Nobody read that to me. When I got to that section in the Bible, though, I was just like, oh my God, it's a full page, you guys. It's a full page of this crap. And you're just sitting there going, who is this? Who is this? Like, who is this person? I've never heard of them.
Why do we need to know that?
Right.
And it's not even mentioned after that. It's like genealogy for no reason.
Like, imagine if your favorite TV show, okay, like 2 or 3 episodes in, so they're still getting you into what, is going on with the characters, right? But like 2 or 3 episodes in, they just come up and they go, hey, by the way, I want to introduce you to every single member of the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. And they just walk you through every one of the players. And then they never show up again. Yeah, and they never show up again. Like, you'd be absolutely confused. You'd be like, what was the point of that? Why would you know it? Anyway. So eventually, yes, I did get all the way through. But it took a while.
Yeah, I was wondering because that a lot. We were talking about morality, and a lot of people, when you ask them, they're like, "No, I've only read the New Testament because that's the part that matters, or that's the part that I've been told that I need to read, and so on." But then when you ask them, okay, but listen, what do you know the kind of God that you follow?
Yeah.
And you cannot know that God unless you read the Old Testament. 100%. And when you read the Old Testament before you read the New Testament, you're like, holy shit, that's fucked up.
Your God's terrible. Yeah, your God's terrible. And you cannot, it is an absolute, it is an absolute restricted move for the believer in Christ to say that they are not caring about the Old Testament. It is absolutely off the table for you to say that you believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God and just put aside all of the commandments from the Old Testament. It is clear. It is clear from Jesus' understanding, God himself incarnated as man, that the Old Testament laws are very much in effect, and he is here.
And it's not just the Ten Commandments. It's like 613 or something.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Now, when asked, according to the narrative, right? I don't think this conversation ever really happened, probably, but hey, whatever. According to the narrative, when asked, Jesus says, they say, hey, what's the most important commandment? He's like, love your enemy as yourself and love God, And it's like, okay, that's fine, but that is not Jesus saying you don't have to obey the other commandments. In fact, it is him reminding you to obey all the commandments.
Every single one of them.
Because you have to honor and love God the Father. And you need to listen to him. And God said, don't be boiling baby goats in their mama's milk. So all of you people out there with your baby goats, how often was that happening? Like, was it just like a regular thing? Like, that just seems so weird.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just so many extremely harmful commandments in there, and obviously we see them used against the LGBTQ community. Transgender people don't wear clothing that is a woman should not wear men's clothing, and man, so on and so forth. So I mean, it's like it breeds such negative values, right? And people don't even realize it. They don't even connect it to their religion. Another one is disabilities, right? Like this is something that we'll talk about before covering this topic. July is actually Disability Pride Month, and so when you see, and there is an example where they use disability as a punishment, right? Either to the person that telling them, oh, we're gonna make you blind because you won't be able to see and this and that, or as a punishment for what the sins of like your parents, or even as far back as Adam and Eve, or like the whole idea that humans are wicked and sinful and the whole earth world is broken and the only way to fix it is, your salvation through Jesus. So something that I wanted to discuss today was like the idea of embracing disability. I'm not necessarily saying that I am happy to be deaf, but it's something that has sort of created the person that I am today. Growing up, when I was first as a kid, I was almost completely deaf. Right? I learned to speak before my hearing was gone. So I learned Spanish very, very well. And then I lost my hearing. I got a hearing aid, which is pretty crappy audio. So for me, growing up during high school, when I moved to the United States and I had to learn English, right? It was a completely new language. I had about 10% hearing on each side. So which means like I would hear about 10% of a conversation, right? I couldn't hear the difference between the letters S, F, H, H.
Yeah,
so it was
tough.
really hard. And so through that time, I decided to just shut down the world. It was just, I spent my high school years in the library pretty much just reading. I didn't really make any friends. Sometimes my mom would make me go to my sister's friends, but nobody really like engaged with me. It was just like I was just gonna be sitting there just waiting for the day to be over, like watching people. I got really good at like watching people, like their details, like facial expressions, like body language and stuff like that. So that I guess that was useful, right?
That's
But
a good skill.
Yeah, it was kind of like living in my own little internal world, and so this led me to not have my own voice. Everybody thought that I was shy. I wasn't shy. I had so much to say. It was just like I knew that if I said something, I wouldn't be able to hear the other person and to be able to respond in a proper, conversational manner.
Yeah.
So when I got my implant, this was about, I have a cochlear implant now, right? So I got it about 7 years ago. So at first, it was about learning what sounds were. The first day that I came home with the implant on, it was like about a month after the surgery, right? And I came home and I kept hearing this sound. And I was like, what the fuck is that? It was everywhere. And I had no idea. It went on for days. And then I asked my kid, and it's like, oh, it's the cat. The cat's on the hardwood floors. I had no clue that sound existed. So
You're welcome.
It was like a whole discovery process.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Every few days I was like, oh my god, what is that? That makes the sound like the birds and the water, and like it was like all this whole level of like learning the world. And so it was also learning to speak, because when I learned English, I did not know this, but I was pronouncing things poorly. Nobody told me about it. So like my kid one day is like, hey, no, it's actually stomach. I was saying stomach.
Yeah, but that makes sense why you made that connection, though. English is a weird, messed up language.
I was using the Spanish rules for the English language.
Yeah, no, Spanish makes more sense.
So, this was like a whole learning process. And so after that, it was like I said, it was like finding my own voice. And that's when around the time that I did the March for Science, and I was like, I can't speak. I can't tell people what I have to say. But I have had times where I speak up and people are not used to that, especially certain family members who we have disagreements with, and they're like, you're shoving your opinion down my throat. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I am saying something that I've never said before. That's always been, I'm giving you some facts and some information. It's not like, I'm not one to share like opinion. I prefer to give people like facts. I love to learn so much. Books, just consume tons of information. And so I feel like that's something that can help people, and they're not accepting of it. It's been a little bit limiting, right? And I think that was one of my main reasons for starting doing this. That just sort of realizing that there are so many people in my same position who don't have a voice, and they don't feel like they can speak. So if I'm able to do that right now and make even the smallest of impact in the world, there's this thing that I would say, that for me the afterlife is not like this eternal life. It's just what I leave behind for like my kids, for their kids. That's the afterlife that I want to focus on. I want to do something good for humanity or whatever, even if it's like a very small, and I think that through connecting with other people, that's how you do that.
Agreed.
I love Gabor Mate. He says that humans have two needs, right? One is attachment, and one is authenticity. Like attachment is like your connection to other people, and authenticity is your connection to yourself. There's another thing that I've always struggled with, like not like I've sort of always felt like a neutral person, but there was never growing up. There was never this like non-binary label. So I've always been like trying to be very feminine. Like my mom hated me having short hair. I shaved it one time as an adult, and she hated it. She hated every minute of it, and told me so. I love it. I love it. I wish I would shave my head again. Like without thinking. Yeah.
Well, So you brought up a couple of really, really great points. I just wanted to touch on real quick because,
Yeah.
I mean, one, just right at the end there, you were talking about, the positive impact we can have on the world after we're gone, and that being that really being what the afterlife is. I love that thought. I am totally on the same page with you.
Yeah.
I think what the world is like when I'm gone is so much more important to me personally than me getting to have another shot at this. You know? I mean, it'd be awesome. Hey man, I love life. I want to keep living. I'm having a great time. There's cool things that I do and have done. Awesome. Love all that jazz. But if somebody came up to me right now and was just like, hey man, I'm going to turn the lights off and it's going to be off forever from here on out. But the world is like 10 times better. I'd just be like, yeah, I'll take that deal any day. I'll push that button. But something else that you had said right at the beginning, and I love this topic, and I know I've told you, privately in our back and forth, I wanna do more on this because I think it's a really, really phenomenal point. Just what you were saying about how Christianity specifically, but I honestly believe you can attribute this to all religions, at least as far as I have come across, the major ones for sure. There is this denigration of persons with disabilities. There is this clear ableism and othering. It is so. For instance, and you don't even think about it on so much of it, but so many Christian conceptions of the afterlife is you're restored to perfection. All your flaws are gone. Everything about you will be back to normal. And that's so gross at the end of the day. Like one of my coworkers right now, one of the hardest working sons of bitches we got. One of the people that is the first person at the front eating garbage and shit and with the best freaking attitude has been paralyzed from the waist down for years. Right? Years now he's been living in a wheelchair. He is not less than because of that. He is not somebody that needs to be fixed. But that is the religious mindset. The religious mindset is so often this thing about you as a person is what is wrong. And it's the only thing that matters about you. You're a blind man. That's what you are, and that's just it's so gross and it's so harmful. And that is definitely something that I think we don't do as good of a job as we can in the atheist, skeptic, secular humanist space. I love the idea of us having more conversations in that vein because I think it's incredibly important. And of course, when it comes to the LGBTQ community, religion needs these very well defined boxes that don't shift and aren't squishy. Because the more squish that there is, the more gray area that there is, the more likely it is that your God actually isn't that important in this space. And that uncertainty, I think, is uncomfortable for so many in the religious space, which is why I think, okay, this is me just kind of psychologizing here, guys. I'll be honest. It's just my kind of opinions, just pulling it out my butt. But here's my thoughts on it. Tell me if I'm off base, y'all. I think that's one of the big reasons why you don't hear a lot of focus from the evangelicals and the Christian nationalists and the LGBTQ haters in that space when it comes to trans men or non-binary individuals, bisexual individuals, asexual individuals. I think because of the fact that that is so outside of their boxes, that they just can't even conceptualize it enough to be hateful towards it, on a regular basis. And it's the gay man, gross, the trans women, gross.
I see that a lot, like a specific bias more towards trans women.
Absolutely.
And not even mentioning trans men.
Absolutely.
It's the trans women that are the problem.
Because
they're afraid of,
they're afraid, they're disgusted, and again, it's because I just again totally pulling it out my butt, y'all. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, or yell at AJ. Actually, don't yell at me. Yell at him. But I think it's just
I'll take the damage.
Yeah, right. Truly, they cannot conceptualize that in such a way because it just breaks their black and white. There has to be this, has to be that. You know, it is so outside of that for them that they aren't even able to muster the bigotry towards it, because doing so would have to grant already so much of a spectrum. They just can't even have the conversation, you know? And I think that is something we need to do a better job of. We need to do a better job of highlighting the terrible, continuous hatred that comes from these groups and these ideologies. Look, when Francis, when old Frankie boy over there in Rome got put in his position, you know, they burned the white smoke and everybody was excited. Oh my God, AJ, I heard so many people tell me, they said, this guy, this guy, SR, he's a friend of the gays. This guy right here, he's cool with us, okay? Except for the fact that just a few weeks ago,
a couple weeks later, he was like,
F-slur this, F-slur that, F-slur this.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. Look, I'm not the one saying it, okay? That's all I'm trying. I'm not the one saying it, you guys. They're the ones saying they don't want you. They're the ones saying the you know, hardcore devout Islamist is the one saying, I don't want you, lesbians. They're saying, I'm not saying it. I want you on my side. I'm excited to have you. They're the ones saying they don't want you. Stop being Catholic. Guys, LGBTQ, stop being Christian. Just don't do it anymore. You get to stop. It's super easy. It's super easy.
Yeah, I've had this conversation, and I was talking to someone who, you know, is like, well, I don't agree with, you know, this person being gay, but I love them, you know.
Oh, sure.
So I'm like, okay, there is a huge difference between accepting someone and saying, hey, that's like cool, you know, like tell me about it, and really tolerating their existence.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's like apples and oranges. Man.
Exactly. What you're saying in that instance is not really like, oh yeah, of course, man, they get to do whatever they want. They're people. Like, yeah, why are we even having? What you're saying is, when you say something like that, what you're saying is, oh, I know they exist, and I really don't like it, but if they just keep it over there, like away from me.
You can be in the room, but you gotta sit at that table, not my table.
Exactly. And that again, that isn't necessarily, right, fundamentally tied to a belief in God. Absolutely, we can see the construction. People believe in a particular type of God. God says certain things. Now here's all this hatred. But the idea in and of itself, right, of that direct connection, that is something that needs to be fought against and be pushed back on. And we cannot, we as the atheists, we as the non-religious, we cannot cut off the religious people who may still have that God belief. Hey, look, they think when you bless the bread, it turns into this dead zombie Jew's body, okay? They believe that, and that's wrong. I just think that's obviously wrong. But let me tell you what they don't believe. They don't believe that a transgender individual should be murdered in the streets. You're on my team. I don't give a crap what book you read, because that ideology, that belief of there's something wrong with you, you need to be fixed. Again, the same thing when it comes to, individuals with disabilities. The same exact mindset. This is something that is broken, that needs to be fixed, and I'm the only one that can fix. That is a disgusting, atrocious, toxic ideology, whether it's connected to a god or not. And you can find a hell of a lot of people out there that are atheists, that are skeptics, supposedly, right? That have that belief. We need to fight that belief. We can talk about the God stuff later. We can talk about your Noah and your 2x2 animals. Stop.
Or seven.
Yeah, or seven, or whatever the hell. Right, exactly. We don't even. But exactly, we have a much more important and harmful ideology that we need to attack.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm going to be on the Truth Wanted show on Friday. And I'm super excited. So I was talking to Dan today, and we were coming up with an idea on the topic. And we're actually, Katie came up with the idea of the implant to put it on.
Oh, yeah.
Like us people. Do you think that God caused this, or like is it gonna be is it a punishment? And like to have people call and talk about that.
That's a good one.
Like bring that topic into focus. And I think like this, it goes with what you're saying. To bring more light to it. To definitely bring more light to it. And it's it goes back to like what we were talking about LGBTQ people, and even it does also apply to someone like myself who's deaf, and the idea of attachment and authenticity. Like you either when you're dealing with religion, you can either be yourself and then lose all these people's support, or you can pretend to be something that you're not, just to please their religious beliefs. And that's what they're asking of trans people. They're asking trans people to give up their authenticity, their connection to themselves. And that connection to yourself is what gives you confidence.
Yeah.
A year ago, I would not have been here. I would have laughed if you told me that I was going to be having a conversation with someone on video, because I had this complete, like, deaf identity, and like, no, I can't. There's no way. I'm not going to be able to have a conversation. And so it's like, or even the way that I present myself now, like I used to be very feminine, and like I would like, but I hated it. So it's like, but now seeing like starting to meet people who truly accept me the way that I am, with my bad hearing, my bad pronunciation, like my looking like a 12-year-old boy, like. And it's like everybody's happy to talk to me, and like, it's like absolute acceptance. It's like I get to have both the attachment and the authenticity, and it's like what gave me the confidence to start doing this. It's like I want that for everybody.
Yeah, and I think again you hit on another phenomenal point, which is that self-love and that confidence in who you are. That is what religion attacks. That is what religion breaks down. It will break you on purpose, and it will fundamentally ruin those concepts for you, because what it's going to do is, after you are there and you are just desperate, searching for anything in the void to grasp onto, it's going to tell you it has a way to get you out. The darkness that it forced you into, it's going to show you there's only one light out of this. That is why it tells you are broken. That is why it tells you need to be fixed, no matter what. Absolutely. And when you finally step away from that, and you start really giving a shit about yourself and caring, like, hey, wait a second, I don't like pistachios. Like, I don't need to keep eating pistachios. There's no reason in the world. Like, I don't care about them. I don't want to eat it. When you finally get to have that moment, I mean, you want to talk about a rebirth. I mean, you want to talk about born again, baby. The evangelicals don't get to keep that language. That's ours, man. You get to finally live your life. You get to finally be who you are, and that's just a phenomenon.
Yeah, I think that's like it feels fucking amazing, man.
Yeah.
It's like just sort of like that's the rebirth. That's the rebirth. Yeah. Like I said, it's just like yeah, and I love that. Helping other people find that. That's the goal. That's the goal. You know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you know, there was this one thing that I was thinking that it has a connection with the LGBTQ community and the disabled community, and that's marriage rights. You know, we have made like pretty big strides on gay marriage, and then you have people with disabilities when they get married, they lose things like their supplemental security income, stuff like that. And there is another one in the LGBTQ community that still doesn't quite have the same rights as everybody else, and that's people who are in polyamorous relationships.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I know that's your thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I thought we should cover that.
Yeah, that's close to home for me too, for sure. Yeah, poly is tough, I think, because I don't, as somebody that is very much in that space myself, as somebody that went through a very long journey of self-discovery and unfortunately many years of being very confused, but also repeatedly told how wrong I was. It is very important to me. But I don't know, maybe somebody's going to yell at me for this. Hey, yell at me. It's fine. I don't care. I don't really see polyamory exactly in the same group as the LGBTQ community. I see it as adjacent, for sure. I see it in, kind of an over. I don't see, because I just don't, I don't feel like and maybe this is just, maybe this is just my perception on it, but I don't see the same type of vitriol and definitely not the same systemic attacks that we have seen. Like when it comes to, we were literally rounding up gay people in the streets in the United States, right? I don't know that we've ever really done that. It's not to say that anybody's, any individual or any group's pain is more or less,
I think sometimes people see it as negative just because of the ODS Mormons.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think that they confuse it.
Absolutely. They're completely different things. They are totally different things. Absolutely. And I'm very much with you. It is one of the last groups in that space, I think, to really gain more normalization and to gain more rights and so forth. I think legally, I'll be honest, again, hey, yell at me, y'all. I think legally there are some challenges to having marriage as we understand it right now, amongst 10 people, just in terms of logistics and so forth for the state. That being said, if you go back just 30 seconds, you'll hear what I said, which was very specific, which is marriage as we understand it now. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we're coming from a bad place to begin with when we think about what human connection and human relationships are and how they should look like in a society. And I think the moment we start to recognize not only the historic understanding of this partnership throughout human cultures all around the world, we have so much evidence.
Pretty new, I would say. As far as human history, or half of the history,
and the idea that one person got to wake up one fucking morning and go, God, I just really want to be with that person, and then everybody else in society was like, yeah, sure, great, we love that. Like, that is also very new and very rare still to this day. So, like, this argument that, like, it's so ingrained in human, man and woman raised a baby, blah blah, it's fucking nonsense.
And it brings this idea that also men and women can't be friends. That's like,
oh my God, again, AJ, you're crushing it. I don't know if you're meaning to, like, seriously, you're hitting all these phenomenal points, because that is another one that is so frustrating for me. Like, it is so detrimental in terms of just general human connection. You're literally taking about half of the population and just saying, I can't have a meaningful relationship with them unless we fuck.
Right.
That's psychotic, you guys.
Like that's all there is. Like sex is
Grow
all there
up.
is. It's
Holy,
like,
my granddad, okay? My granddad lived his entire life in the country, okay? Born in the early 40s.
yeah.
Till the day that he died, 93 years old. My granddad, his best friend, was a girl that he went to elementary school. Kept in touch with her his whole damn life. Loved her to death, talked about her, didn't once even kiss her. Best friends. Man and woman, no problem. Screw that garbage. It's absolute crap. Absolute crap. And it just makes the interactions amongst people worse.
Yeah.
You wanna tell me that you have a problem with sexual assault? You wanna give me the statistic of 1 in 3 women have been assaulted in there? You wanna tell me that and then tell me that men and women can't be genuine friends? No, you're the problem. You're the issue. You're what perpetuates that garbage.
Yeah. It's
Sorry,
just like toxic masculinity, and it's something that I've been around so much, and like hearing, like listening to the ACA shows and like listening to other hosts, and I noticed that there was a lot of men.
Oh,
yeah. I was like, whoa, like the views that these men have is like what the whole world should be like. Like people should be talking this way all the time. It's like people just like having conversations and making connections and making friendships and like just sharing their values and like supporting women and supporting LGBTQ people and not being afraid of trans people, not being afraid of another gay man.
Right.
I noticed the first thing I noticed was like when I've seen like men who are bisexual, they seem to be a lot more in tune with their emotions and connecting better with people. It's just like such a breath of fresh air to like be around this type of community. It's amazing. And that's what I hope for the world for the future,
Agreed. And because toxic masculinity does not mean masculinity is toxic. That's not what it is saying. It is saying there is a subset, there is a category that many people perpetuate under the understanding of masculinity that is purely toxic to others and the individual. There is such a thing as positive masculinity. There absolutely 100% is. And again, I'm always somebody that's going to say like, hey, let's look in the mirror before we look out the window. And I'm going to say, we need to do a better job. Those of us out there that fully think that aspect is crap and destroying the world, we need to do a better job of showing people what positive masculinity is and promoting it and getting individuals out there that have that, and there are people. It's not impossible. So we just have to try.
Yeah. No, I recently was having a talk with my therapist. I had like a sort of like a breakdown and had to do some therapy and sort of finding, and so we were discussing the topic of being feminine or being masculine, and she was like, well, have you ever heard about Carl Jung's the animus, which is like, and the animus is basically like that everybody has both feminine and masculine traits, and it's sort of finding that balance and like meeting in the middle and not letting one be an extreme to where you're like, I am just this big man or whatever,
Exactly.
like understanding, and this is what's gonna help people come to the middle and be able to find that equality that we're all looking for.
Yes, I completely agree. You absolutely lose a part of your humanity when
that's it.
Yep. When you try to get rid of that other aspect of you, when you want to force yourself into such a narrow understanding of what it means to be a man or a woman or a person, or a brother or a sister or a father or a mother, any of those things. Like, you are arbitrarily cutting off your potential, and you're making yourself not as fulfilled. You're making yourself stunted in your flourishing. You don't have to do that. You don't have to. You can live a better life, you know? It's obvious to see when the others are oppressing, right? It's obvious to see when somebody comes along and is pushing people down and is passing these absurd, disgusting laws preventing people medical access, all that crap, right? That's where it's easy to see. What it's difficult to see is all the opportunities that you have restricted yourself from.
Yeah.
What's difficult to see is the true compassion and the connections that could be made that you are completely cutting off from your life. There is an entire level of bliss and emotional happiness that you are restricted from for no other reason than the simple fact that you restrict yourself. And that's what toxic masculinity is.
Yeah. And a lot of it definitely comes from this religious, biblical
absolutely
view of what
man's
a man
the head of the
should be
household. Yep, absolutely, man's the head of the household. I gotta tell the women what to do and all that jazz, and
like women can't teach or be in the church, and you gotta sit in the corner.
That's why God made us first. I mean, come on.
That's funny.
Man. I hate to close. I gotta bounce.
I know. I was just gonna tell you about that time. So it was really awesome having you here today. And we gotta do this another time and continue the conversation.
Yes, let's do I mean, I'm not, well, definitely there. I've got some stuff in mind there. And I'm not inviting myself back onto your channel, but what I am saying is
I am.
We definitely need to do a whole talk just focused on the secular humanist community and persons with disabilities and LGBTQ. Absolutely, we need to have a whole toxic masculine. Let all of that, because that stuff always gets me excited. So.
Man, I know. I love having this conversation. The time just flew.
I know.
It's only been like 15 minutes.
I know.
It's been an hour and a half, man. That was awesome. Yeah. So, alright. So we'll see you guys next time. And thank you for coming.